Have you ever spent hours on an illustration only to step back, take a look at it, and feel like something feels strangely off? You look at other professional illustrators' work and their art looks like a window to another world, but your art looks exactly what it is. A 2D flat drawing. You have all the components, you got all the objects and all the colors, but what exactly is going on and why does it look so flat? And the answer to that is pretty simple. You gotta start overlapping your objects. So let me break this down to you on a fundamental level using only basic shapes. Now on the screen here I have two shapes, and I can tell you that the red shape is in front of the black shape. And as the viewer, you have no choice but to believe me since I am the artist. But as visual communicators, if we are trying to say something like that, it is much better to show it by simply overlapping your objects. And when you overlap your objects like this creates something called depth. And depth is the illusion of space on our 2D plane that we are drawing on. This is the key to help your art feel like that window to another world. Whenever I look at beginner illustrator work, objects are always spaced apart from each other. But when you look at real life, when you observe the world around you, you're gonna see that so many objects overlap each other, even in the most organized spaces. There's another thing about overlapping that is very crucial to an illustration, and that's how to properly overlap the three zones of an environment. Now, as illustrators, sometimes we're gonna have an environment to put our character in, and the environment that we place our character in can be separated into the foreground, the midground, and the background. And when we properly overlap these three zones, we can further enhance that sense of depth. So let's take a look at some art as an example. This is an illustration that I created this past year, and here you can see that the foreground elements are right here, these trees and the frogs. We have our midground, which is our main tree, and our background elements are back here in this green zone here. This is some concept art done by Zach Retz. And here we see the separation of the foreground, the midground, and then the background. This is another illustrator, and you can kind of see the influence he's had on my own work, but this is Tim Probert, and this is even more obvious. We have our foreground element, we have our midground elements, and then farther back we have our background elements. Now, if we don't understand how to properly overlap these three zones, our art can kind of look like a stage play. You know, you have your character, and then in the background, there's like just one single flat object or objects perfectly lined up with each other. But if we have more stuff in the foreground and stuff in the midground, that can help that environment feel a little bit more lived in.